Anyone
I
else?
think Melissa's gonna join us in a little bit, but other than that,
All right.
you want to hit Windows K then?
Yeah. Well, the good news is we are reaching that point where we're talking, getting to details. So today I'm going to kind of run through some of our last big questions, I guess, which they're not even huge questions at this point, but last big questions with where we are with the drawings. We did issue a set of drawings to the group end of last week. The hope was that CCI gets a chance to go through those and come up with any questions. This is the point where if there's anything structurally or system-wise that you're like, boy, we could do this easier or cheaper, we'd be willing to definitely ideas and look at ways to make the project more affordable or more easy to construct and maintain quality. So we're always open to that. That being said, we are getting to the point, let's do that, where we just need to start, really hammering in on some of the detail elements, which will be some of the stuff that I need to probably work through mostly with Melissa and principals and whoever needs to be involved from that side of things. And then we probably do need to have a follow-up conversation about IT. So we'll get our IT guy on board and probably set up a virtual. I think would be good, and we could pull
Our IT guy
John
virtually as well.
Yeah, so we can pull John in and just have it's just a quick run through of both buildings and just make sure everything aligns with how you guys see that. I think somebody's in the basement. See how all that works out. So we'll do that, and then I do want to run over some door hardware questions, and then last I do have some updates for Buckeye just to start looking at those plans, so we can just talk about that holistically, kind of look at the concept of the site as that goes. So we will start with Riverview. And there aren't a lot of huge changes here. So the things we've been really working on is, as you can see, these drawings get muddier and muddier each week. That's because we continue to add layers of detail into these drawings, add layers of information. Real quickly, the first floor plan, if everybody can see that okay, is represented here. Again, the primary focuses we're looking on at the stair. We were able to get out. Rich was kind enough to let our team out and get some field measurements and work through how that's ultimately going to lay out in that existing stair space. So that has been underway, and we've validated a lot of our assumptions, and we've really cleaned up the drawing over in that side of the building. The general classrooms we've gone through and we've made some tweaks to these. One of the most notable was the idea of adding a psych office into this front space. There's still some carryover lines. As you can see, this is still a working document, so there's some lines here that are old carry-through lines that don't exist, but carving off a space for an office. This would give you room for a desk at one end, a small table with a few chairs in there. The room is approximately, I think, it's like 9 by about 15. So it's, again, big enough for a desk down at one end and table and chairs down at the other. The other idea would be you could conceivably split this and get a little storage space off the hallway if you were so inclined, and then a much smaller office. You could get more of like a 9 by 10 or something of that nature. But I think this is a nice usable space that would offer a little more flexibility.
I would agree. I think sometimes you have meetings in those offices and they have a bigger table.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And this is a room too that down the road, say site doesn't stay there, say you dump something else in there in the future, this could also be a small meeting room, this could be a bunch of different things. So I think long term it offers more flexibility than if we tried to break up this room a little bit. Other than that, one of the big conversations was making sure that we get all of our cubbies in, which we've included. We have all our casework in the ends. Our display walls at each end of the classrooms, furniture layouts are on the other pages. The next step will just be to go through, again, with Melissa and staff and just say, these casework elements, do these have what you want and need in these? One of the things I questioned our team on at the end of last week is we're picking up 2 feet of casework here by rotating this around the corner. Is that really the most beneficial way to do it, or would a simplified straight run of casework suffice? You know, we're really not picking that much up by wrapping it around that corner. So there's little things like that that we'll be working on to clean up these drawings and really kind of head towards the home stretch, something more similar to this. One of the other things that we were looking at was there was a conversation about this storage space off of these 2 pre-K rooms. These are where the old walls were. We did push these out. This is now big enough that you could get 2 feet of storage down both sides and space in the middle for people to kind of work through that space. I think this is a nice feature that if you have the pre-K off of playground area outside, be it a concrete pad and you walk out to a playground, or if you pull it up against the building, this gets you a space where you could store some of those smaller indoor-outdoor type play items. You probably still will want at some point a small shed for trikes and things like that that are never indoors. But I think this gets us in a pretty good spot.
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
during this, would it be possible to have a concrete pad out there that we could place something on?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's real easy to do, and there's some pretty standard sizes for those things that you can get. You know, it's not architecture, but those plastic sheds hold up for a long time, and they're pretty durable. So, I mean, there are a couple options there that for $1,000.
Could we move the one at Buckeye that was just put in this year?
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem at all. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you, Ryan?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. One of the other key points that we were working on was kind of this lobby space kind of coming into the building. We were working on a window there. These have been dropped in as placeholders. We're still looking through the aesthetic of those. These are reminiscent of what's happening on the other sides of the building. I'm not sure that the one in the lobby really meets with the character of a lobby space, in my opinion. We might want to make that a little bit more of something than it is. It's just a single window there, so to give it, gusset it up a little bit. And then we'll have this kind of entry canopy here. So I think if you do that little bit of dressing and you have this canopy, I think that just makes the whole thing read a little bit better and feel nicer on that side. So this window is still a little bit of a work in progress.
Ryan, we talked a little bit about view outside of that door to see the cars coming, so.
Yep, and this is a glassy door set with glass above it. So it'll be essentially like the front out here where through those doors, it'll be very similar to that. We could also expand this down like a half a panel. So you could do a 3-foot, 3-foot, and like a 2-foot panel of glass here. So you have just a really nice open view of that space. I don't think that'd be a bad idea. This window was added to improve, and this one, to add this viewing for the supervisor and the secretary so they can see outside to the parking lot a little bit more effectively. But this building will be dressed with cameras as well. So you'll have these views, obviously, but just even having windows help from a security standpoint, because even if your views aren't perfect, people see the windows and expect that they're being looked at. So having windows even passively are an effective way of helping secure a facility. So yeah, we are looking at that. That's kind of in this area. That's the last thing that we need to address over there. This is part of our mechanical system, and I'm working with my engineers to see what our options are. There is chiller component that goes with air conditioning this space. They are putting it down on the ground over here. We have to put it somewhere. I should have done this beforehand. Your current one is over in that yard. There's a mechanical yard by the gym. There's a big one over there. But we can't really, this is going to take too long to pull. We can't really pull that far and make that an effective system here. So we're going to want to do something over in this area. I don't think that's something you want on the roof. That's probably something that we could push down to one of these ends. Maybe put a fence around it just so it's screened, so it's less visible. From a site access and maintenance standpoint, it would be better to have it more towards the road in case you ever need to get over to it. It's more effective, but I don't know if there are any preferences on how you might want to handle that. I'll try to pull up the Google Maps, but I should have done that before. beforehand. So this is the current facility. Our addition is going in this blob over here. This should clear up here, hopefully. Yep, there it is. It will be going over in this location. The current chiller is over here. So to get anything from there to there, and this is not sized to accept this new system. So we want something similar. This is dressed, there's a screening that goes around the perimeter of this to hide it. My thought was that we could do something similar, but it's a question of where you'd want to put this unit. Mechanical unit on the second floor is down here. So we could theoretically put it, adjacent to this down on the first floor. Maybe we get rid of this one window or do like a pair of windows in that area. Or we just put frosting over this one window and you can still get light through that window, but you could put it over down in that location.
I think that's really where the playground area is gonna be, so probably where you have it.
And we could
Makes
just,
sense.
we could again just wrap that with, a nice fence and just dress it that way. That gets done quite a bit. Yeah, and I would rather keep the kids further inboard than outboard towards the parking lot, so I think that point makes sense. This unit too, the further you put it into this area, let me pull this back up. So if our addition's going here, the further we move it this way, there is a chance you'll get more of a kind of a reverberation inside of that kind of courtyard space. So I think having it off that corner probably would be nice. Too many tabs open. There. Moving up to the second floor, these got cleaned up quite a bit. This was one that when we walked, we talked to some staff while we were out here, but we also took a look at how you've done cubbies and kind of casework. In the classrooms you currently have, a lot of the cubbies go along this shared wall between spaces. We are putting those doors in there, so we did have to get a little creative about wrapping those along these walls. You do have some instances in the classrooms where they're between windows, so that's an option as well. We could push them down along that side. The challenge I have with this, or not the challenge, but the contention I have with this concept, and that's one of the things I want to talk about today, is you have the students coming in who conceivably were at recess, or they're coming in the mornings or whatever, and they have their boots and they have their coats and all that kind of stuff, and maybe they're still wet and snowy and it's raining because it's Ohio, and you got all those things going on. I try not to pull them down into your general floor space as much as possible. I try to keep them, to an end or along a corridor wall or something, so that you have a surface that's easier to clean, where all the boots and everything are kind of trafficking. The challenge is this one puts it way back, along the far side of the room. And that's where the question is do we want to look at how we put the casework, maybe we put that off of these walls and put the lockers along the hallway, or do we have a preference on how that works? But this is more similar to what's out there currently.
Could you put the casework on the one wall and move the sink?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's
Yeah,
that's where we.
exactly what I was thinking too, and move those
Move the
cabinets
teacher
and-
station to the wall towards the front there?
Yeah, we
Because I'm
could.
assuming the wall on the right, that's the presentation wall?
This one is a
That's-
presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how we had it originally, as we had lockers here and then casework along this wall.
Mhm.
The challenge was the casework didn't get quite as long because you have these doors that we're kind of fighting with a
Okay.
little bit. So the other thing I got to thinking about is we could do these doors as bi-swing, so one swings into this room, one swings into this room. Right now, this room is taking the brunt of those door swings, so you're losing 6 feet
Yeah, that makes
of wall
sense.
space. So we could do
Okay.
something like that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
soften it a little bit for that door.
So everyone has to feel the pain?
Yeah, and the only thing I don't know is, I gotta look at my hardware and see if there's a way I can do that and have them meet without needing a center mullion between the two doors. I don't wanna end up with a vertical there, so if I can avoid having that vertical and you're able to open that through and that's not a problem, that would be my ideal. But I just gotta check with my hardware guy to make sure that that's feasible. But I think that would clear that up quite a bit. But then we get the doors between all these classrooms, which I think works out really nicely. We did verify that there are lockers, small lockers along here and then along this wall in the existing building. Obviously, we're monkeying this side up as we're putting in these sectional doors, these divisional doors for your security kind of segregation in the building. So those lockers have to be relocated. So we pulled those down along this sectional hallway. There's quite a few. So the question just becomes if this makes sense from the amount standpoint. We could do something like try to bank them all on one side, maybe pick up a few more on one side. We could add little wing walls to accept the lockers, or we could just let them fly. The wing walls, essentially, you'd have a wall, this wall that extends out into the hallway, the foot that the lockers are deep are 15 inches, they look like they're 15 inches, pushes out 15 inches, and then the lockers butt into the side of them, rather than having that exposed metal end of the lockers. And is there a preference for how we treat that, I guess?
Have we looked at any possible way to relocate any of them in the current space that we have?
We did not look at that. You might be able to pick up some wall space there. I don't think there's a ton of open wall space,
I
but there
can't,
might be.
honestly, without seeing how it's laid out, I would like to maybe examine that option before we move them all the way down the hallway,
Okay.
away from is anybody else understanding what I'm saying? Like, we don't know who's gonna be in those 4 upper classrooms yet, correct? And so to pull 5th graders down into that hallway potentially may not be something that we want every morning, every afternoon at recess, because I don't know when those other kids are going to be changing, you know what I mean? I just don't know. So could we look at that?
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Okay.
I believe there were some lockers along here and then
Yes.
along this wall.
Right by the stairwell on the second floor.
Right here there is.
There, yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that we were pushing down here.
And why can't we keep them there? I mean, this is because of the
The
doors.
doors,
Okay.
yeah, the doors chew up too much of that space. By the
Okay.
time you get everything aligned with your stair and everything, it just,
You
there's
guys-
no room
okay.
for that, yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think this, from a flow standpoint, this works great. I get what you're saying, Melissa, is this, if these students that are using this side of the building need to go to these lockers, that does get to be a little bit far to travel. So we could look at some of the space and, I'll just have to verify where we ended up putting, or where they ended up putting them, but I
Yeah, if we
think,
just could look at it,
Yep.
I would like to examine that option, please.
yep,
Thanks.
that is not a problem. Other than that, on this floor, we did go through and we've just been detailing, so, you know, all these little pieces, parts are coming together and building details, you know, we're pulling sections, doing all that fun stuff that make the actual drawings, getting into the stair details, getting everything cleaned up. So that's all progressing. We do have mechanicals, so we were just talking about that before the meeting. Mechanical, structural, electrical, plumbing, all that is becoming real now. So we were out there, we were able to do the verifications, and now it's a matter of, you know, getting that stuff implemented into the building as well. So we're at a pretty good spot with all of that. Melissa, I mentioned it before you got here, kind of my next step with this one and CTE is really to get into the nuts and bolts of casework and fixtures and all the stuff within the classrooms. So I was almost thinking that maybe instead of this meeting next week, we set up 1 or 2 meetings to handle both buildings and get the right people there to go through the
Okay.
pieces, parts, and that's something that once we have that information, we could come back to this group and just kind of show a display of this is what we arrived at for casework. Riverview, for example, there is furniture layout that we've been using as basis for everything. So long as that works, that should be a pretty quick conversation. We'll talk through the finishes, but by and large, we're matching finishes. So I think all of that will go pretty quickly and
Okay.
efficiently, so. That is kind of our big things. This one, as far as, this one's kind of the thing that's sticking out in my mind as the thing we need to resolve the most, but this mechanical unit. From enclosure standpoint, is that something where a vinyl fence that's easy to repair or replace, or
No, just match what's at Riverview. Go with the coated black with the
black chain link?
with the mesh in it.
Yeah, yep, that works really well too. That's really-
Can you turn that chiller?
Yeah,
Turn it so it's running like,
this way.
yeah.
Yep, yeah, that's totally.
Because
what
that way you're not encumbering any of that window that's currently sitting there.
this one here. You're
Yeah,
saying.
it almost looked like an extension, even though it is a fence.
Yep.
It actually work as screening too, wouldn't it?
To hide that playground area a little bit. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. I think you could.
Well, you have to fence a preschool playground in anyway, but that still is
Yeah, you pick up some doing double duty.
yeah, it might stop a runner.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
To the horses.
Yeah.
You want to the
No,
horses.
that's exactly it.
No, the runners. So that's that. I did want to go through.
Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, you already got out of there. Where did you fit in the additional psych office?
We didn't do that. No, I'm just kidding. We did
I was
that.
just, oh my God, Gary almost got smacked in the back of the head. Because I whispered to him,
Wow.
did we talk about the extra office? And he said, yes, okay, there it
No,
is.
literally everybody that I see reminds me that we needed the psych office. So everybody has been doing a very good job. So the psych office, we did carve in here. We talked about the size of it before you got here. It's long and a little bit narrowish, but it fits in that space pretty effectively. We talked about possibly splitting it a little bit and picking up some storage, but the storage would be very small. And this room, I think, would be pretty effective, that you could get a desk down here, a small round table, a couple of chairs, and you could do various things in there. Maybe you just have a couple of chairs and then you have a bookshelf or something along that wall. So there's different ways you could kind of fit that out and still get a really nice space for
Okay,
multiple
perfect.
different
Thank you.
uses. Yep. I mean, quite honestly, too, it's one of those that if we do put a table in there and psych isn't there all the time, some of the other staff could potentially
Yes,
use
that's
that
what
room
I'm
as
hoping,
well.
yes.
So it could be a
Okay.
meeting service space.
A what?
It could be even a service space.
We've done a space like this where we set it up almost like a meeting room space, and you had a wall of casework and a counter at one end that the person that was home based there had their stuff, but they would be able to house meetings if you needed to in that space. So that's something we could look at doing too, if that's, sometimes people don't like that, especially in psych, because you will have some secured materials, but realistically, those usually go into a file cabinet, a locked file cabinet, so that shouldn't really be an issue either, but.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Those were all our drawings. We got all these for CTE too. So in CTE, we're covering all the same bases. I'll fill up the plan, see if there's anything real significant. We've been going through incorporating all those changes we talked about last time, really working on some of the door swings, getting those things to work. We do have a hardware vendor that we've been working through the various keying and stuff, which I'll be talking to you guys about here in a minute. We've had some brief conversations about that, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. On these plans, we've been working on mechanicals. As I mentioned last time, it's probably going to be 3 small mechanical units to feed these spaces, just because it's a bit more efficient for the uses. Otherwise, you have one, for example, that would be running shared classroom and advanced manufacturing. And you might have a situation where advanced manufacturing wants a lot of cool, but your classroom is full of kids, or not full of kids, or maybe there's 5 kids in here, and they'll be fighting each other from a temperature standpoint. So this is, it would be the most efficient way to really kind of cool these spaces, heat these spaces. A couple things that I gotta still work out, this transformer. I think there was a desire from the energy department, from the energy company not to have this fenced around. We're still working through kind of what their position is on that and how this enclosure ultimately gets adjusted and fitted out. The other thing is there is a crawl space access way right around here on the existing building. We're looking at how this landing gets cut back. I had run it all the way over here at one point just to kind of finish off the space. But it probably does make sense just to cut it short like it is now, have that section of sliding rail or removable rail, and then just leave that access way, so if you ever need to get into that crawl space area or out of it. There's a way to do that.
Out's a good point.
I was gonna say, Rich was like, no, we don't need to get in, but
But you
yes,
might need to get
perhaps
out.
we may need to get out.
This one too, I am looking at replacing what's there as part of this project, just because it's old and I believe it's wood and it looks a little bit tattered. I will want this to be a rated enclosure. That doorway will want to be rated, fire rated. So this is the time to do that, make sure that it all gets done properly. Other than that, again, we just need to dive into the details of some of these other pieces. We're working on gathering a little bit more information for the windows. These windows, as we have them shown, they're more commercial style window. They're just kind of a block extrusion for windows like you'd see out here at the front entrance, that sort of thing. They do make some moldings and things of that nature, which are essentially just extruded pieces of aluminum that we are looking at trying to get some samples and such to see if we can get these windows to more closely replicate, some of the aesthetic on the rest of the building, and just try to get a gauge for what the cost of those moldings are. I don't think they're going to be outrageously expensive because, again, they're just a piece of extruded aluminum that they kind of snap into the corners, but it might add that little bit of trim effect. So we're looking at that. And that is kind of that. We got rid of the changing table. That was a big one.
Yeah, the psych office, check the 2 boxes.
Yeah, those are the big ones. Next, I do want to run through hardware here quick. That keeps getting me fits. Let's do this one first. So really the philosophy here is what we're trying to establish, how these buildings will be accessed, and how you control keying and such through the building. So as we look at these spaces, we'll just kind of start down at this end. Obviously you have the classrooms, you have advanced manufacturing, you have this court space with access to cafeteria, access to this cross corridor, which can get you back into the rest of the building. And then you have your existing kind of welding and shop spaces off of this that ultimately would want to get down into this space on a daily basis. So as we look at this, I'll start over here since this is kind of our main entrance, I guess, if you want to call it one. This space down here would be main entrance, so we're looking at where you might want card readers, for example. So cafeteria, we have a card reader shown there. Question is, do you want one there? That is one where I could see a lot of traffic going in and out, but that is one where it is direct access into a very populated space. Do you want them to be able to get through there, or is taking them through the corridor here acceptable? I don't know that you need both.
I would rather have it to the corridor than I think directly to the cafeteria.
And I think this, if we put the camera system there, and this becomes
I would agree.
a main entrance, if you will. I mean, it speaks back to SRO and all your, the entire system, so I think that'd be pretty effective. And then we could just change this to a standard lock set. So for your exterior doors, this door over here and this door over here, how would you like those to lock? These could be ones where they're set up like a classroom lock set where you unlock them from the outside and you can key lock them from the inside or key lock them from the outside. Or it could be set up like a storeroom lock set where you have a key to get in and then the door is shut and you need another key to get back in. It never stays open. Is there a preference? This one I almost feel, the one going into construction, I almost feel like a storeroom lock set would make sense. Because if you have a kid prop it open or something like that, it's just very exposed.
I see, if we had the crawl space, I think that guy can get out.
I don't think we need them to be keyed.
I think a card reader on that door actually makes sense to me.
This
I
one?
agree.
Yeah. On one of those, I don't know which one, I think maybe,
So this one, from the standpoint of if somebody's using one of these other rooms, this gives you more of a general access to the building.
Yeah, I like that better.
This one, if you're
Because then you'd have to go the whole way through.
Yeah, this one, if you're expecting a delivery, somebody's gonna pull up, you're gonna see their truck, they're gonna honk their horn, somebody's gonna open the
Those
door.
are all good points.
Yeah, so-
But that one doesn't, then on that one, it needs to just be locked all the time.
I don't disagree with that. And then the question just becomes how you want that hardware. You don't need hardware on it. It doesn't need to have exterior hardware, it can be locked all the time.
What I was envisioning was a panic on the inside with a blank on the outside, like just a handle.
Yeah, really just an exit only?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then it auto locks every time somebody goes in and out. So we could totally do that. Would that apply, so that would apply there, and then we end up with a card reader here. What about the cafeteria doors, back to
No.
those then?
I think those are the same thing, exit only, locked all the time. I mean, not,
I think those, maybe they have a key, I mean, I think they're keyed now, like to be able to get it standard. I wouldn't put a card reader like a standard lock. Cause I could see cafeteria people coming in there sometime, I mean, they come in the kitchen door.
So
I can see where those could be useful to have a key to it, if you're bringing something directly into the cafeteria, like for,
I was just thinking after hours.
yeah.
Well, you could have it keyed, but like a storeroom lock set where it's keyed, but as soon as it shuts, it's locked.
Oh, yeah, we don't want classroom locks on any of these doors.
Yeah, no,
so
that's,
then-
that's how it would be, like, you have to key it to open it, but it would still be a way to open it from the
Yeah, you could
outside.
open it from the outside, you could get inside, and as soon as
Yeah.
the door shuts, it's locked again.
My concern with nothing but card readers, and I guess they'll have keys too, but my concern at some point is if the power's out, or if the internet's down, or that would be,
Yeah, anything that we have with a card reader, we should have a keyway on it. This way, if we have to get in the building, we can.
Yep. Agreed.
Hey, Chris,
yeah.
we could also, in any of the doors that you don't put a card reader on, we could put a door sensor on there and an alarm. If someone was to prop it open for too long, the alarm would go off after a certain amount of time. I don't know if that's something you're interested in.
Wouldn't that be something the instructor would oversee?
It would be, but that would be a check for the instructor, just to say, I would avoid that for now, I think we can do that after, if we need to.
Can we go back to the cafeteria door? So is the intent that kids will go out there and eat lunch during the day, or go in and out during the day at any point?
I
And then
would
how will
ki- I
they
would
get
kinda
back
hope
into
so.
the cafeteria? If we do not, if that is automatic locked from the outside?
We could put a dog on the panic, Melissa.
Huh? What does that even mean?
You
Yeah.
push the handle,
Pitbull?
yeah, you push the handle and you take an Allen key and you lock it in place, so then it pulls the tongue and it keeps it unlocked for that duration.
Or,
Old school doors.
or does it make more sense to put a holdover on that one? Because,
We can, but if it closes, it's gonna lock.
but then if we air condition the cafeteria, we need it to lock.
Correct.
So then the dog makes more sense.
I think the dog makes sense from the standpoint of even when you have what's perceived as nice weather here, it's still gonna throw off your HVAC system, like if you keep that open all the time.
Yeah.
And the bees.
And the bees.
The bees, forgot about the bees.
But you want the kids to be able to walk back and forth.
Yeah, we want it to be
If it's
a door.
dog, they can, yeah.
It's not a problem, so a dog sounds like the best application.
Melissa, you're getting a dog.
Or is it
Yay,
all,
I'd like an.
or is it all electronic?
I want a
no,
Bernese
read-
Beagle.
No, I think the dog is mechanic. Mechanic.
Because then you could do it after hours. You
Yeah.
have,
Yeah, then you can
Yeah.
control it.
Do we want to add a keypad to one of these exterior doors, either into the corridor or the one?
Like the alarm keypad?
Yeah.
Absolutely, by the card reader.
this one?
Yeah. I'd almost put two in there, I'd put one by each card reader. I mean, you're gonna have somebody who's gonna,
I agree.
Keypad, and we'll do one of those here too.
So are you thinking tied separately from the campus now? Do you see what I'm saying? Or would
We could do just like we do at the board office, we could maybe.
Code as its own zone?
Would, yes.
Then you need is there a keypad when you're in there to get out into the main building?
We'd have to at
You'd
that
have to put
point.
one in then
Yeah.
somewhere.
Unless those who give it, well, see, then you get into, we could, like, your code could be the whole complex,
Mhm.
whereas Ryan's code could just be CTE, but if he, goes through the door, then the dog will get you.
So
Friendly dog.
if we're ever running like
works small time.
after hours welding classes, they would come in through that, they would need to have access to the welding shop if they came in. So they come in through that door, they make it up, but they have to go all the way out to come back in, right?
Yep. They just come in the back door.
Yeah, they gotta, or they.
Well, welding can get in if you have this door,
Right.
however we key that. I mean,
Yeah.
can be keyed to lock.
Okay,
So the way this is set up right now is this is kind of viewed as your secure vestibule.
Mhm.
So people get in here, you have the ability to lock down these doors if you wanted to, or these doors,
Okay.
or these doors. So you're trying to keep people in this space. This door is one that's off of there. It is a connective door.
is that still inside?
This is inside.
Okay,
yeah.
then that's fine.
But this one, if you did get in here, you could conceivably get back into the rest of the school.
True.
So this is one, again, like I think this door would be really nice to have as a connector between these two spaces, but that's one that in a lockdown, you're gonna wanna make sure that gets locked. So let's just real quickly talk about this kind of flow. So somebody comes in the morning, they key in, they turn off the alarm, then you have this space. There's the cafeteria here, which we have it called out as a classroom lock set. You unlock it in the morning, people can get into there, you can lock it after hours. You can do whatever in that vein. This would also be one that you could look at with a card reader, if you were so inclined. Is there a preference on how you key that? And this is also one where we don't have it drawn yet, but it's gonna be there. There's gonna be these bump outs like this has over here. There's gonna be something over here to accept the doors, so you could prop them open and have them on hold open. So if you have something big going on in here, you could add hold opens there if you wanted to.
I'd almost think that you want them open throughout because that's only I'd almost think you'd want to open throughout most of the day. Because you're gonna come in there, then you can go right to the cafeteria, that's your main set. Having them open, I think would be, because the majority of your flow is gonna be in the back doors, into the cafeteria. And having that open, and then that'll get you into the commons or anything else. Because you can either, are you going straight, or is that a door that goes straight through the commons? Or what's the C?
This one?
Yeah.
So this is access to the common space.
Okay.
So this one is another one that I think a classroom lock set's very appropriate.
Mhm.
You just lock that off, and
Yeah.
then that is what it is. We'll have a closer, because this is a firewall. So I think that makes
That
sense.
one always has to stay closed on?
It would be best to have it always closed. And I think that might be appropriate, just because of the space. You could have it unlocked,
Yeah.
but closed.
Okay.
Those double doors you're talking about, Ryan, those will be with the magnetic hold open, so in the event of a fire alarm, it just drops.
Mhm. Yep, that would be these. I'm looking at these the same way. We could have the exact same hardware, I think would make sense. And then quite frankly, this set, same idea. And realistically, this set. This one, we had called for a card reader at one point. I don't know if it's necessary just because of all the rest of that. I think these, quite honestly, most of the time won't be locked. I think you'll have, access through some of these doors, so.
Yeah, I think the card readers are only to get into the building.
So we'll do the Cs with the hold opens here, here, here. And I think that works really nice. And then we have, as long as we're over here. Oops. There we go. Don't try to do work while you're presenting at a meeting. Right, there we go. As long as we're down in this area, this is all kind of staying in through here. This is, for all intents and purposes, a new room. It's that storage space for wood shop and supplies for CTE. We have a storeroom lock set. That's one that, again, it has a closer on it. It closes itself automatically. It locks automatically, and you need a key to get in, but you can always get out. I think that's a good lock set for there. Bathrooms, we have privacy lock sets. These can be with notifications or not. So you turn the thumb turn and it says occupied, or you can have it where you turn the thumb turn, nobody knows, and they have to knock. Do you have a preference?
I think the notifications make sense.
I do too. They're ugly, but they make sense.
I never really thought about those as ugly.
They
I
are.
think,
Now
I
you're
think
gonna see
that's
them.
interesting, necessary and super helpful. I never thought about them as ugly. Yes, we have the fan. We have the fan that will lift your wig off.
So, moving back through this space, we have again another storeroom lock set on this closet, which I think makes sense. The classrooms will all have classroom lock sets. Again, those are ones that you can key lock from the outside or the inside. Just assuming, is that what you want? Because you can also do them where they're thumb turned from the inside.
I think the thumb turn, because from what I'm learning with the teachers is, I mean, we did that, we're doing that at Lamouth, is they want the thumb turn for the ease.
So I have a district that I work with, they do the thumb turn on the inside and it has a notification on the outside that it's locked or not locked. Their concept for that is if they have SRO or somebody running through the building in the case of an emergency, they can look down the hallway and see all the greens or the reds and know that areas are
Oh, that's interesting.
fortified or not. So
I never thought about that.
it makes it quicker than having to check each door. Do you want the notifications on those?
I don't know if we need the notifications.
I don't think so.
No, we just need to lock.
So we'll just call them thumb turns. Turn, no notification.
That seems like something else that can break.
It's another moving piece. This set of doors, to get back into welding, do you want the same set of hardware on that? I would assume so, but is there any reason to treat that any differently? The only thing I don't like about that door is it is like this door over here. Those are the two doors that allow you to get back into the rest of the building if they don't get locked. But this, as a storeroom lock set, would be pretty unusable. Kids could only exit there during the day. They wouldn't be able to, open the door to get to class.
Well, you kind of want that because they're gonna be going back and forth to the shared
I think
classroom.
you do too. That's why I think a classroom lock set makes sense, but somebody just has to make sure they lock it if there's an emergency. And again, there's enough, like this locks down, this locks down. There's a lot of lockdown built into this, but there are weak points you just have to be aware of. And then we're calling passage lock sets at the doors between shared classroom and construction. Is there any reason you want these to be lockable? Passage lock set would mean you could just get through all the time. And do you want a removable mullion or no? Removable mullions are more secure, the doors hold up better, but they are a thing you have to take out if you're wheeling carts back and forth. And this one in particular, between shared classroom and advanced manufacturing, I could see where you'd be pulling like the robot arm or, a cart with some supplies on it or an example project back and forth between spaces. So I could see where this one you might not want something blocking it up.
I could see where it makes sense to lock into the advanced manufacturing, just because then you can use the classroom and then that stuff doesn't have wheels or doesn't get removed or damaged or any of that. Maybe but I think that it does need to have you know, removable mullion and all of that as well. Like, I don't want the removable mullion in there. I think having the doors swing open makes sense.
So we could make these both classroom lock sets, and you could just leave them unlocked all the time too, is another option. And then if you wanna lock them, you lock them. I mean, it's a couple extra $100 or whatever for the hardware. It's not, to replace it later would be $500, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense to have the ability to lock more down.
You can't put the hardware on the doors, Ryan, where it'll pin to the floor and pin to the frame
You can.
instead of the center mullion.
You can, yep, those, eventually, they need adjustment. I'm sure you've dealt with that a billion
Yeah, and
times.
with the center mullions too, is over time they start to get loose, they rattle, and then the next thing you know, nothing's closing
Mhm.
right.
So we could do
So
the,
it's 6 and 1/2 pounds is the other, it's whatever everybody wants.
we could have one of the doors be the fixed one, so that you just have more of a, like a, you know, a slide that, or as opposed to the turning latch style Cremon bolt that goes up and down. We could just have one of the push type that makes that primarily secure door, and then you can pull that down when you need to, and the other one could latch to it. I mean, that, I think, would be pretty effective. So we could have one active and one active panel. Typical. Cool. That was exciting. Any other questions on hardware? That was really helpful for this one.
I don't have on hardware, but what about roof access?
Roof access, we have a hatch that will go right off of here. So there will be a hatch to get you up to this roof area. And that will be like a 4 foot by 4 foot penetration with the hatch and the little cage and all the stuff. What'd you say?
I said I can gain weight.
Yes.
Sorry.
Some of those old ones, you had to crawl through pipes and around things, and I had one that was like in front of a giant electrical panel, and the roof hatch leaked on it all the time, so.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. It's all right.
Good to step on to get up onto the roof.
Where rubber soled shoes.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some stuff with roofing. All right, this one is pretty simple, I think. Over at Riverview, the concept is just, I think, naturally a bit more simple. Question becomes where we want card readers, and again, this one is from an access standpoint. You want them at the main door. Question becomes, do you want them at the second set? Probably.
Yes.
Do you want them at the office?
Yes.
And then this one could just be a standard office lock set. Okay. Moving back in, we have a storeroom lock set into the little closet here. Each of the classrooms have classroom lock sets. The bathrooms have privacy lock sets, which are all very typical. We have classroom lock sets into the storage space, and then a card reader from the outside into the storage space. So again, if they go out to the playground, they'd be able to card read back into the classrooms.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Yep.
If these two rooms are being used for pre-K, they would have to go through these doors and out, so we thought a card reader here would make sense as well. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. These two doors, again, you're coming in here, assuming these get shut, they could have card readers, or you could make these be just the classroom lock set like we had at other places, or a storeroom lock set, so they lock shut and you have to key them open.
They're not card readers. They're keyed in the
With
rest of
magnetic
it.
hold opens.
Yeah, with
So
magnetic hold.
when they shut, do they lock automatically?
Yes.
Yes.
So a storeroom lock set where you'd have to unkey them.
Yeah.
So that goes back to, do we want to do that at the high school? Let me pull that one back up real quick. One step forward, one step back. These doors, do we want those on the storeroom lock sets too? All three of these. Maybe the cafeteria you have keyed so that it could be open all day if you wanted to, but you could shut the doors, like if they were.
So I guess the question is, for the cafeteria specifically, if we keep them open all the time and the cafeteria is not, we do not have the funds to put air conditioning in it. Is that gonna screw up the internal works of this thing, trying to pump air out?
It will mess with your addition.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in that case, we would need a classroom set. If we are able to air the cafeteria and the commons, then I think that,
So let me rephrase that. If you had this open, because you had an hour event in the evening, not the end of the
I'm
universe.
talking during, I mean,
If it's all day, every day, that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yes, so I think that's the biggest, is if those are open all day, then that's gonna become, then that's what they're going to be, because that's just
Yeah.
what is, you know, if they're always closed to lock, then they're gonna be, so it needs to be a classroom.
Classroom locks up, no hold opens at that point, and then.
If there's no air, if there is air, then we'd want the hold opens.
Got you, so.
Or I think I think I would keep them. Can you, I don't know enough about those, can you set different ones to be activated and not? Like, can you turn, or are they
I
all?
mean, you could
they're
just,
always
you
on
could
or
make
always
them,
off?
you could make them off. I mean,
Yeah.
You could just, you know, deactivate them. They have a power supply going to them, you could just deactivate them.
Okay.
So, yeah, you could totally do that. So maybe we just put in the hold opens and.
I would
then-
put them in, because down the road, I mean, that's gonna be a part of the,
Mhm.
That would be the same thing for that ramp then, that those doors leading to the hallway would have to be shut.
These would be better served if they were shut most of the time, probably. Yeah, that's probably true. Unless these doors stay shut, but I don't know if there's here nor there about that. Maybe these stay open since this is part of the existing school, and these stay shut and you just go in and out. These could be open all day. But again, these are ones you might wanna, well, let's think through this. If you have hold opens there and if they're active, the worst thing that would happen is somebody props them open and you shut them. But if you have an event after hours and you want them open for a few hours, you'd have them there and you can prop them open.
Yeah, that's not gonna hurt the system, it's when we're open 9-10 hours and you're pulling the humidity from the
Yep.
main hallway down there on your return air is when it's gonna start.
Right. So do you just put them in and not use them, or do you think people would be so unlikely to avoid that temptation that it may make sense not to put them in? And then the other question that goes with these 3 sets of doors specifically is back to that storeroom lock set. If these close, do we want them to lock, fail locked? And if that's the case, these should be storeroom lock sets probably. I think from a lockdown procedure standpoint, it probably makes sense to make these storeroom lock sets the more we talk about it.
Storeroom's fine because those who need keys will have keys, be
Yes.
it staff or admin.
The exception would be is if these do not have the hold opens. But these 2 might want to be classroom lock sets.
Could we do it with the mullion, so that so they swing opposite, so that there's like one swings in, like the one swings, see, right, we're encouraging people to walk on the right side.
Yes.
So you walk on the right side one way, and you walk on the right
They
side
just
the
have
other.
to be movable, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally do that. So we can do the bi-swinging doors. So do we want to do that for all? These, first of all, do we want these on hold opens? I think it makes sense.
Those ones make sense.
Okay, so we'll put those on hold opens. These 2 sets it sounds like we're talking ourselves out of.
I think it's just one of the two. I don't think it's both.
I agree.
But I think you just need one of the two. So whether you do the top one or that one as the bi-swinging.
I would do the one closest to the main hall.
That was my thought too. Because I think you can keep those down there, the ones closer to the new addition on hold opens. But if those are on bi-swing, that then closes it off and it's just in and out, and that establishes your path of walking.
Because the majority of your material coming in is probably not gonna go much further than the wood shop storage.
Right.
But anything that does come up the hall continues going up, it's not that hard to pull the center out.
And then do you want these, the only challenge with that would be, is that they wouldn't be able to fail locked. Because you'd always be able to egress in one direction. So if you visualize it like this,
Right.
you could panic out either direction.
But you're only,
You'd be able to get into here.
you're fail locking, it fails locked to there, so the only thing you have access to is the wood shop storage.
You'd be able to get into here too. You'd be able to get into all this.
If in a panic situation and those close,
Be the same thing. These, if these,
Oh, 'cause they're
these always
egressing out.
panic, these always panic this direction.
okay.
These, you'd be able to get through. So that's the only problem with the bi-swing door is you can't lock them. That's why we did this, the more I look at it.
So that doesn't make sense, but,
You could put the mullion in there as just the separator. I mean, you could put a mullion, people will probably run into it, but you could put it there. Without definitely run into it.
then it almost makes sense, now that to not necessarily have those as holdovers, but to have the ones that towards the addition always closed, pushing out into it. And there's your close, and then the ones at the top are kind of just open.
These,
Those are the closed ones all the time, because I think if you're gonna,
so these we would put probably a storeroom lock set, so they close and lock in an emergency.
Right.
So we'll put those on a storeroom lock set. These,
those would be on a classroom,
classroom, because they'd be shut.
they'd be shut most of the time.
And then these, probably a storeroom lock set.
Yeah, because they'd be open most of the time.
Open most of the time, you get down here, you punch into this space,
Yeah.
and just in the case of an emergency, somebody would have to lock these doors. Or it'd be desirable to. This would all be connected,
Right.
but you wouldn't be able to get from here in, because that would be locked.
And that top would lock too, because that top would cover. Because those could be closed.
So this would be pulled open. And there we go. And these would be. All right. There we go. Now we'll jump back. So this one, we have storeroom with lock sets, and these will be hold opens. Wow, that's a big font.
We know what those are now.
Yeah, we do.
That's a S too, right? Not the card reader.
This would be S, yeah. Thank you. Card reader, these are just classroom lock sets. So I think we got that floor pretty good. And then moving up to the second floor, these would be S's with hold opens again. Oops. Make everybody sick going around here or something. We got storeroom lock set in the mechanical, we got privacy into the restroom, classroom lock sets into the 2 small group rooms, classroom lock sets into the 4 classrooms, and then classroom lock sets we'll do here. We'll do classroom lock sets. All right, that's fantastic. Any other questions about hardware? We will, once we get to keying, That will be during construction. We'll have a keying meeting where we'll talk about how you want these keyed down. We do want to just verify, I'll send over well, you guys have the floor plans, but I'll just send the clean floor plans just to get your sign off on the room numbering and room names. We were gonna want that to be as close to what you want the final to be as possible. So whatever, I think we took a pretty good stab at making it make sense with the existing buildings, but take a look at it, and when we send that over, and just let us know if you have any questions on that. There's still time we could change that down the road. It's just once they start doing all their electrical and they're running data to the classrooms, it's always best if the rooms match up with the names that are on the drawings, or else people tend to get a little upset. He laughs because he knows, yeah. Confused. All right, so those are all of the updates that I really wanted to cover at both of those schools. I do have some update for Buckeye, if anybody is interested in seeing that. I can bring that up.
I'm definitely interested in seeing it.
And seeing what?
Oh,
Buckeye.
oops, apologize about this.
Can we do that without the committee having gone through and made their recommendations yet?
I did get an email with some recommendations from the Buckeye committee
Oh, okay.
that met, so I'm working on incorporating these. These are in no way, shape, or form final plans. They have not been reviewed by anybody. So these are our first attempt at establishing floor plans based on some of the comments that came through. So just real quickly, just to get everybody acclimated to the plan, and this is going to look a little smaller than I want it to. We'll just have to zoom in and out a little bit. So what we have here, this is the existing building. The parking lot does not show up in this view because of where I took the aerial. But this is the edge of the property line. We're looking at extending a parking lot here. If I erase this, you can see the existing modular units that are there. So this would be the idea of pulling the parking lot down along this end. This has no purpose in how far I pulled it down. This is not designed at all. It's a placeholder. This could stop anywhere. It could go however long we want it. It's just the idea that there will be something somewhere along this side. This is not something we're focused on. The thing we have been focused on is looking at this addition. The last correspondence I had gotten was looking at doing 3 kindergarten age classrooms on this site, and then 5 first grade through, older kid age size classrooms that are more multi-flex classrooms, mechanical space, restrooms within the kindergarten classrooms, shared corridor restrooms for the rest of the space, gym space, small meeting room, stage, and then some storage off of that. So I'll kind of run through this plan. You can see how this kind of lines up on the site. This is very similar to some of the very early kind of concept renderings that we had done, but there are some tweaks and some modifications. So real quickly, I'll go through the classrooms. There is this connector piece that would attach. You're not seeing the existing school here because I'm just working in my model presently. But you come down here, we've weighted the younger kids down at this end. The idea being they have their restrooms that are within their classrooms, so they're kind of self-sufficient in that regard. These 5 classrooms would need access to a shared restroom set that would be up at this end of the building. So we thought it would make sense to kind of push them down this direction, have the shared restroom between the classrooms and the gymnasium so it could be shared by everybody down at that end of the building. These classrooms are comparable to what you have over at Riverview from a size standpoint for that age group. Bathrooms are very similar. Everything is very similar to what we're doing with the addition there. So they're in keeping with that kind of footprint. The challenge with that is that it throws off kind of the configuration with the other size classrooms as they kind of march down the hallway. So you can see that I have these 4, or these 3, it was 4, these 3 that are kind of married up, and then we have this little bit of a stagger that comes with the other size of classrooms. This didn't end up being a bad thing. I think it will be nice from a sound isolation standpoint. Each of the classrooms will have like a little porch, if you will, and you can have a little bit of a different color in the floor or something like that that draws you into the classrooms, creates this kind of thing down the hallway. It gets the doors a little bit further apart, so there's a little bit of sound separation, so I think that lays out nicely. These classrooms as well, we had looked at the concept of that kind of team teach, co-teach sort of thing where you'd have access between two classrooms. So we have dotted in some doors for that ability. There is one classroom that it probably doesn't make sense to connect to anybody because they have nobody to connect to. So you do end up with 4 classrooms that could have those doors if you chose. Moving down to this end of the building, I'm gonna come back to this central section, but gymnasium, so this has been about 10 different sizes in my drawings. We had a small gym, then we had a bigger gym, then we had a standard size gym. This is the exact same size as the Riverview basketball court. This is the same size gym. This is slightly smaller than previous plans we've done. So we had a bigger gym size on these plans. So this actually reduced in size a little bit. But I think it's a really nice size gym. It's a 74-foot long basketball court, 50 feet wide, so it's standard width. It is shorter than most high schools, but it's still a nice playable basketball court. So you could post things there, you could do stuff with it. It fits volleyball in there. It's a nice serviceable gym. It works really well. Off of that, there was a concept, or at least a discussion about potentially removing the stage in the cafeteria to open up the entire cafeteria and maybe gain some space in there. I have not looked at what that would mean. If it's feasible, it seems like it would be feasible, but there might be some structural things that we need to consider. But if you were to do that, and the stage was desired down at this end, I think it'd be really, really nice. And that you'd end up with a big space here for the gym. You'd end up with a stage off of the gymnasium, so you could set up for, winter festivals or whatever you have, presentations or whatnot inside the gym space, have ample space to it, have access to restrooms, have all that sort of thing, and have it all in a spot where there's parking and everything outside. So I think that lays out really nicely. This stage configuration is essentially the same as what you have at Riverview. This stair here is positioned right here over at Riverview on this kind of edge. I turned them in so that this back wall was similar and they matched. And I also like the idea of having stair access to the stage from the hallway. So think if you have a presentation, say parents are in the gymnasium watching, a play. You'd have access from the hallway, so kids in costumes could come up the back stairs and be able to get on stage without going through the gymnasium. I think that's a nice feature to be able to have. It also allows you egress out of that space and a lockable door so that you can section the stage off from the rest of the building. There's storage, gym storage off of the gymnasium, and then there was an ask for a meeting room. I thought this was pretty cool, to be able to fit a meeting room down at this end of the building. It's adjacent to the gymnasium. It could act as a temporary office space if you have some, after hours signups, or if you have basketball there that night, you could have kind of a home base for that, or whatever it be. There would be a spot there that's almost a green room, hospitality type space off of the gymnasium, and on a daily basis could function as a meeting room and space for students, for intervention or whatever it is. You have that additional space. The other thing I really liked about it is if you have this foyer space outside of it, you'd have access to restrooms, the meeting room, the gymnasium, the stage, all of that without having to backtrack into the rest of the building, which I think is nice.
Brian, what's that blank spot? Is that just
This, so,
mechanical?
yeah, so I'm playing with two things here right now. I wasn't happy with this. So let me run through the program quick and then I'll
I'm
answer
sorry,
your
go
question.
ahead.
No, you're perfect, because I would ask the same question. I wanted to fit in a girls' room, a boys' room, men's, women's, and then a family restroom. So again, you want, I think in this situation, a space where you do have a changing table so that if you have parents coming for something, there's a place to go. So that's what the purpose of this would be. These would suffice for 99% of your time. The thing I didn't like about this was the proximity of the door to these sets of doors. I'm not a huge fan. I think this works. I've tried flipping this around in this space, just mirroring it on itself, and about 10 different configurations in here to make it work, and try to get this opening further down, and then access to the restroom, but this works, and I think it will be fine, and most people will be very happy with it. But I think there's an opportunity to move this space over here if I put my mechanical room here. I think it would work out better because I'd get a longer restroom. This restroom would be longer, which would give us more space by the sinks, which I think would be desirable. I would prefer to have a little more space by the sinks. We'd have access to that restroom, and then this was going to be a storage room for general purpose storage, which I think it would be nice to have a little bit more space there. We could also look at having a multi-purpose storage space. You could also carve in another intervention space, which you can never have too many of.
Would the sinks go in the bathroom, or would it be a shared sink like
That
Parkside
was
Riverview?
shared sink outside. I was thinking along this space. That's part of the reason I was having a little bit of anxiety about this distance. I was thinking that if I don't move this, then I'm probably going to want to stretch this wall further to the north to get more kind of throat depth there, so you have more passage space to get between those things. But I think the amenities here are really nice. I think moving the restrooms further away from the main door probably isn't a bad thing either, to get them down at this end of the hallway. The mechanical room, the only reason that I have any mixed feelings about the idea of flip-flopping these is you probably will end up with a louver on the outside of the building to the mechanical room, which, again, isn't the end of the world. We could do something to kind of dress it up a little bit. You can put in some nice architectural louvers. We could do something with we could leave it. A lot of schools have it just there, and it looks fine. But that would be the one negative to flipping these. This room size is more appropriate for the mechanical that we'll need for this building too. This is pretty large. So I think all of that would work out pretty well. I think this foyer, it's sitting at around, it's 14 feet. 16 feet. But I think that's a nice sized space for the amount of people that you could potentially have in here. Figure before a basketball game or after a play, nobody goes directly outside. They tend to kind of linger around in the hallway, and having an anterior space for that, I think is nice to be able to do. So I think this all works out pretty effectively over here.
Do you have to have, I mean, could you put the bathrooms, like turn them?
So
Put them back there?
over here,
Yeah, and then get rid of that door?
well, that's kind of where I was going with it. I think if I flip these, here, you're gonna see the sausage being made here a little bit. If I just take these, trust me, this is a way harder job than it looks when I do stuff like this. I take those and I mirror them. Well, it's just there. So it'd be like this. I don't wanna do that. The restrooms would extend down, so this would essentially slide down.
Well, obviously you put it actually in the vestibule, or in the atrium area.
Into this, you could push them that direction too.
Yeah.
The thing I liked about this is we could push these back. I could get more depth here. These have, well, my toilets didn't travel with me. But, yeah, but-
Those are extra overflow.
Yeah, those are extra overflow. But you'd be able to kind of consolidate the restrooms at the far end of the hallway, and then you could have all this space out front where people
Yeah.
could just kind of gather, which I think would be a nice thing. How are you talking about rotating?
So I was thinking, actually, if you put them, if you go by the gym a little more.
Yep.
You can put right this way, to turn 90 degrees going out this way.
So, oh, you mean to just have them along that wall?
Yeah.
I could do that too. The thing I liked about this is I think it is easy to look at that foyer space and think that's a lot of space, but it really isn't when you get a lot of people
Okay.
there.
No, I would,
And I'm
yeah.
a little concerned, like.
I really don't want people lingering.
You
they're
don't-
loitering, I want them out.
Right, but you also, when you have a group gathered down by
Yeah.
the restroom waiting for their kids and people are kind of
Yeah,
waiting to
no,
go
I-
outside the doors,
yeah.
I think this is a very appropriate size space
Okay.
for what
But
you're trying to do.
could you flip the bathrooms to face the hallway?
You can. So I looked at that too. All that does, the challenge with that is it does push this
Push that
wall
door.
down. And so I don't know if that's good or bad. It would be less noticeable, and on a normal daily basis, having that pushed down a little bit would probably be better for the kids in this hallway, because they would have closer access to the
Yeah.
restrooms.
That was fine.
So we could look at that. The only other challenge with that is, and this is part of the reason I did what I did, I have reasons. This restroom here, this family style restroom, this would be inboard. You'd have this weird amount of space that would be tucked back in the corner that you wouldn't have access to. So if this was pushed to the hallway, you'd have that other one, and then
Are you putting a janitor, a slop
there would be
sink closet?
janitor's closet, yeah. I think we have enough room in the mechanical room that I could carve a little room out of there and a small electrical closet or technology closet there too.
Does it make sense to make that, we go back down, to actually put either a fourth kindergarten classroom or even like a Jack and Jill on that, one of those first two?
Ask a question about the kindergarten classrooms.
Sure.
Why did we, and I don't remember from the Buckeye meeting, why did we decide we're putting kindergarten classrooms down there? Why?
We don't currently have kindergarten classrooms, so we're gonna build a specific to make them equitable. I do remember having that conversation. So we would build the kindergarten classrooms because the other buildings had the kindergarten classrooms. I wonder, and I guess we currently have 3. Does it make sense to to have a 4th?
It would make everything marry up better. And you could always use it for whatever grade level you want, but somebody might have access to a toilet if you don't have, it might be a first grade classroom or whoever it
Or
is.
it could be a special ed classroom too, at
Could be.
that point as well. I mean, if
Could
we
be.
have it to that aspect. I mean,
I've got this residual space.
yeah, I
I mean,
think.
is what it comes down to.
I think the flexibility might behoove us, to have that flexibility in the classroom, if it's not.
And, okay, so here's one other thought. So presently, I'm showing this restroom up here that was the family restroom. I was figuring during a daily basis, that could be a faculty restroom.
Okay.
It would be one. It wouldn't be men's and women's, which sometimes there is a desire to have that, but there'd be one. If you,
Elementaries can play nice. They play a little nicer than high school.
you could conceivably put these 4 classrooms down here. Never mind, I don't think that. I was thinking you could kind of flip the script
Right.
and move these down and have that, if you didn't need that restroom, you could use it as a faculty restroom off the hallway. But I think this probably works better, and then you're not drawing people further down that hallway.
We had talked about 12 at one point, and now this is 8. I don't remember why we went back to 8 and not 12. Is that because it was too long, or the 2 stories wouldn't look good? Or I remember having a ton of conversations about it, or just finances.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I think that's what Denise and Cassie came up with.
In our Buckeye meeting, is that when they had that conversation?
Well, I know in our Buckeye meeting, we were looking at 2 wings equaling 12 classrooms total, 6 on each side.
We had talked about adding on. Yeah, we've had so many iterations. I wonder if. I mean, I don't know the cost, but to add 2 more classrooms, or add 4. Yeah, thanks for the math. To add 4 classrooms,
It's been a long day.
it has been a long day. Would
At the end of the day, an 8-classroom addition is really only gaining 2 classrooms.
yeah, you're gaining 2. You're not gaining.
Eliminating 6 modular.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I think if you add to 12, because
Well, if you say you're averaging around 4 sections per grade,
Three right now, but depending on growth and everything else,
Well, I don't know.
if we have to shift and pivot in the district, if we have additional, additional classrooms are never a bad thing, they're gonna go use, and I think we would find different ways to use them if we had additional space. I think that's a way to kind of free some stuff up if we ever needed to, which would be a nice, and we had talked about 12, the
I
board,
think technically the board vote was 12.
it
I
was
believe.
12, wasn't it? Yeah.
So it was a tentative look at 12 classrooms, and so I wasn't in the meeting, you all were in the meeting. Okay,
I've been in so many
so
meetings,
what-
they're all running
So
together.
I'm saying what was said in the meeting with the Buckeye Committee, because I wasn't in that meeting.
So we talked a lot about just keeping the 94, because we talked about, some of the other plans. Keeping the 94, and then we talked about 2-story versus 1-story, what looks better. But we never really came to a specific number. I mean, that wasn't my,
So I would suggest you talk with Cassie.
okay.
I mean, she lives there.
Right. I think, and I think she would say 12 makes sense, but if we did 12, we would probably need an additional office space too. Because you have more students. you have
So
more
obviously,
people.
right now, we're not going to address that. This is
No.
just a rendering.
Right.
And from here, gather more information and we go from there.
Would we go straight back still? Would we make it,
I think I would push back further.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that would make the
So-
most sense. Just, you've got the space to.
Yeah, I mean, just like Riverview, look at how many iterations,
Yeah.
So right now, we're kind of at a spot where, okay, this is a thought and an idea, here's a rendering. Gather more information.
I think this was, my hope was that today you would see what spaces look like.
I mean, obviously, you gotta talk with Cassie and talk with Denise and see what they were thinking, I don't know. Let me tell you, I don't wanna guess what they were thinking.
But it does make sense, building 8, we're only gaining 2.
right, it makes, if we could gain 6, that would give us so much more.
So what we know,
To do
well,
stuff with.
what do we know? What we think we know is that it was the Heisley Park that flowed into Buckeye, right? And
Mhm.
that's finished.
Yeah.
So there's really not much new flow. All the new flow goes into Riverview.
It
For
does.
elementary.
It does, but I think if we,
And for Melridge, static, right? Or maybe even declining.
Melridge is significantly declining. I think if we look at redistricting or bringing 5th grade back to Riverview,
Okay,
potentially
now you're into a
preschool,
different.
that's a whole different.
Now you're talking redistricting, and if you're gonna talk redistricting, that's a big
It is.
conversation.
It absolutely is, but if we had 12
So
classrooms, it gives us more
my
flexibility.
suggestion would be, let's talk about what we need and what we want,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we need, if this is the rendering, because we need 8, this is 8 classrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we need 8 and we want 9 or 10, then gather more info and see where that goes. I mean, there's no issue with that, right? Whatever it turns out being.
I think it's,
Because you want the flexibility.
you absolutely do.
You don't want to be locked up to
No.
where all of a sudden you're out of space.
No, and I think the other part is you don't want to spend so much building, you can't do the original part.
So, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. You have something here, talk with people and find out more info.
Sure.
Yeah, so what I can do is I can share this plan
That
as
makes
well,
sense.
and then we can, obviously have those secondary conversations.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I really wanted everybody to see was what the classrooms look like next to each other when they're real, and they're not just our concepts. And then what a stage, what storage, what meeting rooms, what the gym, what those all feel like once you have the actual dimensions. Because the one thing that was asked of me is, can we do an iteration where we have the gym turned east-west and one turned north-south? The thing that I found was the dimension from here to here and the dimension from here to here are within 4 inches.
I was just gonna say,
So
that's a square.
It's a square. The thing, I like this configuration from the standpoint of you have easy access to get people into the gym. If I rotate it, it becomes a little bit trickier. So I like this configuration quite a lot.
Is there a consideration to put in a small set of bleachers like we have at Parkside and Riverview on the one?
You could, it would be nice.
To help
You-
for assemblies and.
If you did that, you'd push out, so there's 2 ways to look at that. If you're using it primarily for stage viewing, then you're adding about 2-3 feet onto the length, the width of the building in order to fit those there, and then you can pull them out over the basketball courts. But if you're using them to watch basketball, then you're adding more distance, because even if you're only pulling them out 3 rows, you know, that's in another 6 feet, so now it's 9 feet. So it really comes down to how you intend on using it. I think having bleachers, or at least having the space for bleachers, is nice, because that would be pretty awesome space if you were able to do that, but there is cost associated with those as well.
If we did bleachers, could we do the rollable aluminum ones?
Tilt and roll?
Yes.
Is that what you're doing? Yeah, you can use those, I use those all the time. So, I mean, those are ones that you could move around the space. Those are nice if you have space inside your storage, make your storage a little bigger, and you can roll them in there, and then you can position them around the outside of your floor. You might want to make your floor a touch bigger in order to be able to house those. The other thing I liked about this configuration with the stage was if you have these steps, parents coming to watch their kids at basketball practice could sit on the steps, and, you know, kids could hang out on the steps, and it could be a very functional space. I've sat on the stage at Gurney Elementary a million times where my kids went to school. It's nice to be able to have that without having to pull out chairs every night, so I think there's some nice features to it.
Could you go back to the aerial a second?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Would it be good to have a covered walkway from there over to the new addition? Where
Could
the
be.
sidewalk is?
It could be. It just depends on how often people would walk through there. This distance, I mean, there are a couple classrooms up here. There are these classrooms that could use this one and pull up into the building, so you'd be adding maybe 50 feet onto their walk. So it just really depends on how critical that is felt by, I guess, people that run the building. If you are walking outside, that is something where on days like today, you're probably still going through the inside of the building. But there are parts of the year where you could definitely do that.
We should probably talk to Denise and Cassie about that courtyard in between the buildings and see if they would prefer that to be more of a usable space, more of an outdoor classroom space than tree roots and an oak tree.
It's very idealistic.
And I assume much of the playground would have to be moved, would that
Yeah.
just go
Yeah, it's gotta
to?
get moved over.
to-
Basically the whole thing.
Well, all that stuff has to come out because that needs regraded in there
Mhm.
to get better drainage. You know, it's way too high against the buildings.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move at least to 3.5 to 4 feet of wore out wood chips.
I think what this opens up to you though is as you get a playground back in this location, it's another one where if you have, you know, something going on there, you'd have the ability to really kind of work between your gymnasium, kind of your social space within the building, the playgrounds, maybe you have a field back there, maybe these are a couple fields back here. It's just, it turns into a complex as opposed to an elementary school. It's just more of an asset. You just have more flexibility with what you can do there. And some of this stuff doesn't cost more, you know, some playing fields, it's grading and mowing, you know, so long as we get it graded right when we do the construction and you have access ways to get there so that you have a little sidewalk that connects it back and grandma and grandpa can get back there to watch, you know, grandkids, I mean, then you've done quite a lot and you need the sidewalks anyway. So it's just a matter of planning that stuff out and making sure we have all those assets, you know, located on the site in a favorable way, but I think it's really nice. I think the other thing that you get, I like the idea of an open playground so that you have access to it, but I also get the concept of trying to be able to keep the playground back so that, you know, the kids are a bit shielded, if you will. In this community, in this neighborhood, these are a lot of houses, and I think kind of tucking it back here would give you a little bit more separation where it might be audibly a bit more pleasant, you know, for the neighbors to have it tucked behind the building. I think there'd be some benefit to that as well. Playing fields are fairly innocuous. Soccer,
Can never have enough soccer fields.
you can't. I'm a football guy, so.
Or football.
Or walkways for grandparents.
Oh, for sure. I think what I found though is I was really satisfied with how some of this is coming together. I think The features, I think, will be great. It's a matter of making sure that all these boxes get to where we want them to go and just double checking that what we have shown is really what you're intending to do. And then how on a daily basis you look at it and say, I could use this room for that. Or this room has one use a week. Maybe we, pivot and look at using that square footage differently or cutting that square footage. This doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle. So if we don't need this corner, we could cut that out if it is beneficial. The thing we don't want to do is end up with a shape that we can't, functionally.
What's wrong with that?
It's a little chopped up. I think you have the opportunity here to do something very simple, very effective, efficient, and provide yourself some.
Ryan, I have a question for you.
Sure.
From the old building to your rendering, how many feet typically need to be between the two sections?
So if we don't have windows, then it's probably around 20, 25, something like that. If you have windows in there, it's 30 feet is generally what you end up with.
Okay, so what you're showing is 20 to 25.
I think I have 20. I was trying to, as I laid this out, trying to have this make sense with this over here so that they kind of look a little similar.
Does it have to be fire rated windows then and all that?
If you did windows, yeah.
Well, with those classrooms, would they have to be?
It
Well, you
would,
have
but all the
windows on the
windows,
side, not on
they
the back.
face out, yeah, these edges. So they don't face towards
Oh,
this.
okay.
The one thing that I would have is if we want glass in this connector, that might be a bit of a challenge. And if we have glass in this connector, it would probably want to be more down towards the addition. This whole thing couldn't be glass without me having to add more firewalls and stuff. I think that is not an efficient use of your money. I think I would be recommending that you push your doors down to this end. The walkway is already pushed that direction.
Would you have an entryway there also?
I think it would, yes, yeah. And that's one that, again, there is this walkway here. I think even if this wasn't covered, I think a connection across here in some capacity would make sense. If nothing else, you're going to have, maintenance and you're gonna have people moving around the facility. And if you come out of these doors and have to walk through the grass to get over to this corner of the building, I think there's a mechanical room over here somewhere. It just makes sense to have access on concrete. Again, this is fledgling at this point. This was really meant to be a kickstart to the discussion. And hopefully we can layer a bunch of questions on top of this and, really start to think about what this wants to be.
In terms of cost,
Mhm.
is it more more efficient to renovate the 94 section or to just build what we want?
My experience is cheaper to renovate, but I don't know what your thoughts would be on that.
I guess
It would be cheaper to renovate, but from a usage perspective, you're gonna run into a lot of issues with that unless you can fit what you need within that, the outside walls. If you're gonna renovate only, it'll be cheaper, but if you start putting an addition on the corner to square it up and have to demo one wall, double the outside walls and build new walls, then you're losing your cost efficiencies.
No, I would, living within the space, right? I'd want to live within the space, but I wonder if it makes sense to repurpose maybe some of those, have discussions about repurposing some of the spaces in the 94. So-
Like making that 2 classrooms and
Section.
creating a library space
Potentially
in the new.
making it,
New
yeah,
section.
potentially doing something where you, because the other buildings have, like the other 2 new buildings that I'm thinking about, they have a designated STEM lab, they have a designated art room, they have a designated music room. Not that we need to designate all those, because they're not used all the time, like Ryan said, being efficient with your dollars and spaces, but do we look at maybe doing something in the media center or the library where it becomes like more of a collaboration space in a large group or a group learning space where you could have some louder activities down there, which is the exact opposite of the library, but then putting the library in another space somewhere else. From a standpoint of that might be used a little bit more as a large group gathering space. I think that's what this building lacks, that they had in the music room. Like the music room and the other rooms those are huge rooms, but they also double as like meeting spaces, because they're big, you can get a lot of families in at that time and have them all sit there, and they're right off the top. So I wonder if that makes, I'm just thinking out loud. As this comes together, I'm thinking, are we really truly, when we built these in the 90s, the library was the hub of the building. It's no longer the hub of the building. We don't need computers. We don't need, kids have Chromebooks. We don't necessarily, we need the books to some extent. Yeah, absolutely, we need books to check out and all that. But it can look a whole lot different, and do we renovate it to look different?
Sketch something out.
Yeah,
Have you ever seen me draw? It's not.
I think you need more windows in there. It's just like, you go in those rooms, it's like a cave, it's so dark, and so you could, cut new windows in and really dress it up and make it more of a cohesive space. But here again, it's gonna need roof, it's gonna need HVAC.
That's got HVAC in it.
Well, yeah, but it's, to
it
the
needs
point
to be
it needs
replaced.
replaced. So if you put, $150 to $200 a square foot into this to get what you want, or do you go $300 to $400 a square foot to get something new? So in that case, you're only looking at maybe $200 per square foot difference.
I agree with you with the windows, but I'm also wondering if we change the lights out in that to use like those faux skylights that produce light that look real. Because I've seen some things that are done with that they don't seem like real expensive upgrades, but they make a big difference.
So I think the short answer might be, if we're going through this effort, this is a monumentally large effort when you look at the big scheme of things, because you're doing an addition, but you're also looking at the existing building. You don't want to go back with what you have just because that's what you have. You should go through the effort of saying, we're getting new spaces. How do those relate to our existing spaces? Are our existing spaces as efficient and functioning the way we want moving forward for the next 20 years? It's not, do they work now? Yeah, they work now because you've made them work now, but are there better ways to do it? So I think that's a very effective strategy. I think it's a matter of, we could get the rest of the building floor plan on there. Then you could start looking at, like for example, I've done entire just utilization studies where you say, we have our specials split out all over the building. And our kids, it takes them 10 minutes to walk across the building to get from one special to another, and they're back-to-backs, and it's a mess. And we've done studies where we've grouped them and reconfigured rooms just to get that more efficient, and that's changed people's days, it's much more effective. And that's just really about talking about strategy and how you utilize space. So I think looking at that floor plan, talking about who's where and what might be most efficient and what features do we not have now that would help benefit us with these programs down the road, I think that's very usable. And then if you don't
Isn't that what the Buckeye Group is gonna do?
I would hope. I think that I would hope. And that's something that, again, we can generate this plan, we can add the other layers of information. If you want me to show up ever, I'd be happy to do
I think
that.
we're gonna need you there to really kind of walk us through some of those true spaces. And now that we have a start to it, I think having you at those meetings to talk about programming, educational spaces, what the old rooms look like, because I think you bring up a good point. You know what you know, but what you don't know is what it could become.
Right.
And I think that's a part of it where I've seen classrooms transform just by new floors, new windows, new lights, maybe some different type of casework, but just stock put in over a summer. And it came real quick. And then they put like HVAC in after the fact, or they put the majority of it in to kind of make it work. So I think that's a good point, is what are we using these spaces for now? And what are the rooms and what are the problems with them? Because we use these spaces for all different kinds of things. But really, if we're gonna put kindergarten rooms down there, well then the kindergarten rooms up here, which are bigger rooms, what do those become? Because it doesn't make sense to go kindergarten then 5th grade or 4th grade, probably kindergarten primary.
So
up there, but we gotta take it back to Buckeye.
In your Buckeye committee meeting, were each of the classrooms with this rendering identified as to which?
We did not have this right.
Well, obviously you gotta go there, it's the next step.
I think we take this to the next step. Our first meeting was, okay, how do we get kids out of the trailers, or what does that look like?
Okay, so, find out where the classrooms are.
Yep.
I mean, then you'll have a better idea in that 90s wing, if you're gonna rental it, what kind of configuration you need.
So the
Right?
thing
And like what you're saying, so you're not walking all the way through a building when it's right here.
The thing I would ask, the way I like to start projects like this, where you're doing, spatial utilization study, is what are your challenges during the day? What are the things that make your job difficult, in the classroom you're in, or, with the schedule that you have, what are the things that make it tough? And it might be, I have to walk clear across the building for this period of the day. It might be that, I'm right next to somebody that I co-teach with, but we have no access to each other. It might be those things. We talked about renovating this space versus building new and all those sorts of things. Maybe one of these rooms down here, a wall needs to be adjusted. Maybe that's something that totally changes the world, but we don't know that until we kind of go through the problems, identify the problems, and then, work towards solutions. The best step is always, we've defined our kickoff. This
Right.
is a kickoff, and now it's to look at it and say, these are our challenges we still need to work through. How do we best make use of this space?
I absolutely agree. I think now, because you've totally shifted the building where the left side of the building is now with sans the gym, because that's the spot where it makes sense. But that's the academic wing.
Mhm.
Like that's the straight up spot that's academic. Maybe but that's shifted what it traditionally is now.
One thing that we didn't talk about, I think that we need to talk about in committee, is that we're putting our tiniest people farthest away from all of our front services. You're far away from the principal, you're far away from the clinic, you're potentially far away from therapist office. I know that we talked about the bathrooms. I guess I didn't know that we had decided that, because although it makes it equitable, it does not make for necessarily a good functioning elementary building. Those kindergarten teachers are going to be, they don't like to send kids 2 rooms down to go to the bathroom by themselves. When you send a kindergartner from that location all the way up through that building to get to the clinic by themselves, that's a long walk for little legs.
But that was my point, is like, we have this as an idea. We should get the existing plans on there and see, maybe those rooms aren't as small as we think, or maybe there's a way you could capture some space.
Do you move the office, or do you move the clinic, or do you
Well, that's,
move?
I think
Yeah,
we
I
need
think
to
all
do
those
that.
are-
I
those
think
are all the
this
right
is a good
questions.
yes. I think it's,
And
and
that's,
then we determine how many classrooms we really think we need,
yeah.
if we're thinking about reconfiguring.
But then you weigh all those things too. You look at it and you say, well, it'd be really nice to move the clinic. And then you say, well, what would it take to move the clinic? And, oh, that's doable. Well, wow, that would be just a tremendous amount of work to do. And what is the challenge it presents if you do it? Because right now, having the clinic up front, next to the main entrance and stuff like that, that's a way to look at things, or is it?
Or do you put it in that space back in the back by the gym and just have your single office and build a new one? So, and then have the restroom, have like dual.
And again, a parent coming there to pick up is always what I'm thinking about. They're going there, their kid's throwing up. But having a clinic back here off of the parking lot is really no different than having them up at the front, as long as you have a way to buzz them in and get them into that space. Having a clinic next to the gymnasium and next to the playground, also a great thing, because those
The
are the
bloody
two.
kids come right in.
Yes, they do.
Right now, the way it's configured.
You have a floor drain.
Okay, good stuff for the next book I meeting. I have a question. I have a question about the CTE.
Sure.
Add more kids if you.
I have a meeting
So I
on
think this is
Thursday
already a little bit
where
of extra
a bunch of
space.
people from different schools are coming and we're talking about career tech and things like that. Could you send me I don't need to know what handles you're putting on. Could you send me a nice picture that I could show them what it's gonna look like, Ryan? Like, pick out which one you think would be the best for me to
Yeah,
put.
some of those little renderings, are those helpful? There's a little screen
Yeah,
that's
it would just, I
Um,
want them to see the floor plan, because I'm gonna walk them down there, but it's gonna
Are
be
you,
districts from all over.
and if I send it digitally, it's okay, or you need it printed, or?
No, digitally you'll be fine, because I'm just gonna put it in a slideshow, and then walk them down and kind of talk them
Okay,
through.
cool.
what we're
Yeah, I
doing.
can totally.
Not anything, it's not the main part of my presentation, but I wanna be able to talk about what Riverside is, LSU, what Riverside is doing and what it's going to
So,
Thank you.
piggyback off of that, we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the high school.
On the speed you've got.
It's March 15th. One of the things we like to do is in kind of the commons area, show some some scale drawings of what we're building now. Could you produce some of the bigger drawings?
Yes.
Maybe some even like running with the outside. I don't know, like some of the stuff you've done. I don't want you to do extra work.
When do you have that, cell celebration or
Yeah,
presentation?
it's March 15th.
But like, is it all day or is
It's
that?
in the morning.
Okay, because I might try to talk to our marketing department, see if they're available too, try to get them out, take some
Okay.
pictures and do that sort of thing too, so. Yeah, can we connect offline and just
Yeah.
kind of talk through that? And then Melissa.
That'd be perfect.
Yes.
Maybe we touch base tomorrow too, just make sure I get you what you need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your best bet is, I've got a professional development all day tomorrow. Not that I can't step out, so send me what you're thinking and then
Okay.
we'll take a look at it and then I'll call you if I need to, okay?
Sounds
Does that
great.
sound good?
That sounds
Okay.
good.
I have full confidence that you will pick something out that will be delightful, right?
Sure, it will be great.
It will be just fine.
Awesome.
All right.
Any other questions? This was very helpful for me.
Yeah, I got a question or comment. So on Buckeye, we're sitting tight till you guys have further conversation as to where we're gonna land with whichever program you're going with before we do any more pricing exercises.
Yeah. I think that seems fair.
That sounds about right. I think there's gonna be
Okay.
enough, as much money inside, maybe potentially, I hope not.
Okay.
Are we
That's
pretty
all I
well
need
set
to
on the
think.
amount of classrooms at Buckeye, or could there be more?
We had talked up to adding more. I think we have to go back to the committee and really kind of have some deep dives as to what it looks like.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm asking is, with all the, the additions, there's access points needed, IP speakers, some other equipment, and I've got, 4 or 5 days to submit a Form 470 so we could E-rate this equipment.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to get that figured out. That was all.
What is it, what is that for, E-rate for 2025 or 2026?
2025 current. I mean, there's a few days left. We can submit a 470 and get, 60% discount on this equipment.
Because then the question just becomes
If it's not bought by the end of 2025,
yeah.
which I don't think Buckeye's plan to be. No.
That's stuff you.
Buckeye would be E-rated probably 2026.
Okay.
Scott's shaking his head yes, like.
There's just too much to do.
But-
Right, Ryan? I mean, there's a lot of work to be done.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, the addition's one thing, the gym's one thing, but you're going into the building.
Yeah, yeah. No, I fully agree.
And Dennis is the guy you want to talk with about that.
About going into the building or?
Well, all the work inside the building.
Yeah, there's a lot of work inside the building.
Yeah, and then, and here again, what Ryan said about, knowing exactly what you want that interior space to do. In my opinion, I think you have kindergarten and first grade separate from 2, 3, and 4. Because they're at that critical stage, they need their own kind of development. And then they go 2, 3, and 4, so they need to be separate. Now, how hard is it to, let's say, add bathrooms in existing rooms in Buckeye?
Depends on what we have for plumbing in the area. If you have plumbing sanitary mains that are nearby, running down a hallway, it's not the end of the world. If you don't, then it's a big problem. So, my guess is most of the classrooms have sinks, don't they? Probably.
Most of the classrooms, yes.
They do?
Yes, they do have, there are sinks. They're much smaller though than the rooms that we are proposing to build, which makes a different size. But they
I
do-
don't know, those rooms are pretty good size. Once you get in, they're actually pretty good sized rooms.
So, I can pull that together and we can just see
Yeah.
apples
Because
to
if you
apples.
could put, the K in first grade on, the front half of one wing or that west wing, existing wing, and then you can put older kids in the back wing and, some other kids over to the right wing. Like you say, you could reconfigure that 90s edition into more of a group space or something like that. There's, but here again, you have to have those conversations with the users.
Can you do that in a typical summer period? Or
Well, no.
Or would you build the, that's
Yeah.
legitimate. Or do you build the addition first, because you're gonna need classrooms, and then shift people around?
That's how I think I would approach it, is you do the addition first, that gives you some relief, you can work one half and then the other
Yeah,
half,
okay.
And there's-
however it works out.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between replacing lights and updating mechanicals versus, you know, moving an interior wall or adding bathrooms. So, I mean, that's why it makes sense to really kind of look at those pieces first. Because again, some of that might not be the end of the world to try and do. You might have a space that will take a little longer to get done, but knowing how that's gonna all ultimately work out, I think we need to just feel it out. So, awesome.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, this was great.
Good
Really appreciate it.
job.
Well, thank you, everybody, and
All right.
we'll get some stuff.
We'll see you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And we could turn the heat back on.